We are going to we're going to start our Advent series today. So as Linda has, you were going to pray for me, weren't you? Let's do that. Let's do that to start with. Go on, let's go. Okay, so we are starting our Advent series. We have got 3 weeks here on our Advent series, and this is going to be on the theme, it's the kind of theme of angels. So I think it's going to be quite interesting, actually. And there is a 4th instalment, but we haven't got enough modern services before Christmas in order to fit that one in. So the 4th one, if you want to listen online a bit later on, then it will be delivered at one of the other churches, and it will be available for you to listen there. So we are thinking about angels, this angel theme. And this week it's going to be on angels and prophets. Next Sunday will be angels and Mary. And then I think it's the 21st, so the next time we meet before Christmas, it will be angels and Joseph. So it's going to be interesting to unpack it. We don't often hear Christian talks on angels, do we? And there's actually quite a good reason for this. And the reason is that we read here in Colossians 2:18, Paul says that he warns against worshipping angels, making it really clear that actually it's God we need to be worshipping. And in Revelation 22:8-9, it's really interesting. John, he falls at the feet of an angel in an attempt to worship him. And the angel says, don't do that. It says, do not do that. I am a fellow servant of yours. Worship God. So this series isn't about angels. This series is about the messages that God gives angels to deliver to people, and about what the responses of those people is. So we're going to look at 2 of these encounters today. And these 2 are to do with our Christmas story. There's a lot of angels in the Christmas story, aren't there? And but these 2 are about preparing the way for Jesus. And the first one is Isaiah's commissioning. And this happened 740 years before Jesus was born. And the second one we're going to look at is John the Baptist's dad, Zechariah, and his encounter, his visitation from an angel telling him that he was going to have a baby, and that baby would prepare the way for Jesus, for the Messiah. So let's start with Isaiah. So Isaiah was a priest. He was from the tribe of Judah. He lived in Jerusalem. He would serve on rotation at the temple under his priestly duties. And he was given this really strong, clear, hard message from God to deliver to the leaders of Jerusalem and Judah. And this message was one of judgment and hope. The judgment side was saying, look, you're rebelling against God, you're treating the poor badly, everything's going wrong. You need to turn away from that. You need to turn back to God. But he knew that they wouldn't. Their hearts would be hardened by hearing this message. And so the judgment of God was going to come. And he was saying, look, guys, the empires of Assyria and of Babylon, they're going to knock you to the ground. You're going to be taken away from your homeland. It's going to be awful. But it was also a message of hope. And he said that this is God's judgment. He's using these empires to bring around his judgment. But actually, the reason he's doing this is to cleanse you, to have kind of press the reset button, because you're going to come back. You'll come back to your homeland. And when you do, we can start again, start afresh. And this will be when you can share with all the nations the good news of God, because it isn't just for you, it's for everyone. But Isaiah also said, one day there will be a Messiah, a rescuer who's going to come. And he prophesied Jesus. So he had a big job, and he wasn't listened to. And after he died, exactly what he had prophesied came true. And that actually made it quite exciting, because it means we can look back at those prophecies. It means that the Jewish people could look back at those prophecies and see, well, okay, it actually happened, like he said, but we've got this one bit left. The Messiah bit hasn't happened yet. And they could hold on to that for hope. So let's have a look at his experience. I'm going to read from Isaiah 6. It's going to be 1-8. And I'm going to read a chunk at a time, then we'll unpack it, go on to the next bit, and we'll kind of do it that way with this section. So it says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were cherubim, each with 6 wings, 2 which covered their faces, 2 they covered their feet, and 2 they were flying. And I'm just going to stop here for a minute because I just think this is amazing. This really stood out to me. There's a lot to unpack in this bit, which we're not going to do all of it, but isn't it amazing that there are angels, there are creations in God's kingdom that we've never seen? Like, we've not got an angel, we've not got an animal or something with 6 wings, have we? It's something that's kind of beyond our comprehension. It doesn't feel kind of based in reality, but doesn't that just give us a little glimpse into how big and exciting and unknown to us God's kingdom is? I find that exciting. Anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. So let's carry on reading. And they called to one another, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory." At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. I mean, this is some serious worship, isn't it? So loud, so powerful, that the actual building shook. It shook so much that smoke was produced. We've probably all been in worship sessions that feel incredibly powerful and that have been transformational for us, where we've really felt as though we have experienced some of who God is. But I wonder when the last time that was, the last time we were able to fully engage in worship to the point where there were no distractions for us. There was nothing that got in the way. We could just be fully immersed in worshiping God. Maybe it's been a while. Maybe that's something that you need to revisit. And hearing and seeing the seraphim worshipping would have been incredibly powerful. It wouldn't surprise me if Isaiah's response was like, "Great, this is good. Let's get involved and to start kind of singing with them, to fall to the ground in worship of God." And that that's kind of expected. You would think, I can imagine getting caught up in that atmosphere. But he didn't do this. Let's read what he did. And this is Isaiah talking. He said, "Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." He is broken. He is ruined. He feels as though he can't possibly carry on living, being so sinful in the presence of this holy, holy, holy God. He talks about his unclean lips and the people around him that have unclean lips. And other places in the Bible, it talks about the words that come from our mouth are a reflection of our heart. He's saying, I am deeply sinful. And I think his response is revealing for us. It helps us to see that the clarity and self-revelation that comes when we're in God's presence. His holy, holy, holiness shines a light on our sinfulness. Now, I think we all know that we're not perfect, don't we? But how often do we respond in such a way? And we know the end of the story almost, don't we? And so we know that we're forgiven. We know that all we need to do is sit down with a cup of tea and say, "Oh, sorry, God, I kind of lost my patience with my kids this morning," or last night in my case. And I'm sorry about that. Please forgive me. Right. So I've got a few other things I want to talk to you about. It's really casual, isn't it? And there's something good about that because it shows an intimacy in the relationship. But there's also something that we're missing, I think. Something deeper, this deep sense of ruin, of brokenness, of gratitude for what God has done. We lose the gravity of what Jesus did on the cross because it's too easy sometimes. So let's carry on. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hands, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, "See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for." Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" Isaiah was cleansed, and notice that this happened before God spoke. I love the kind of order of this commissioning. So God reveals himself in his glory. He's surrounded by worship. Then God's presence brings Isaiah an overwhelming self kind of consciousness that he is sinful and ruined. And as a result of Isaiah voicing this, he is cleansed and forgiven. And then God speaks. There's a kind of preparation, isn't there, for us all? And after all of this, it appears that Isaiah still has a choice. He doesn't say, "Right, Isaiah, I've got this job for you." He says, "Whom shall I send and who will go for us?" And Isaiah could stay silent, couldn't he? Or he could say, "Oh, well, you know what? I've got this mate and he'd probably be the kind of guy that you're looking for." But he doesn't. This is what he says. He says, "And I said, 'Here I am, send me.'" He doesn't know what the job description or mission is. He doesn't know the destination. He doesn't even wait to be directly asked. He is up for it. He wants to get involved, whatever the job, whatever the cost. And you know, God is still in the business of using people to bring glory to his name. And I wonder what our response is to God about this. Do we say, "Look, I think I know someone else who'd be quite good for this"? You know what? I did that with the children's and family worker role. Hannah said to me, "I think you should do it." And I said, "I don't think so, actually. I don't think that's quite my bag. But I've got a couple of other people I think would be really good." And I went and talked to them and they weren't up for it either. And then it was really interesting because over time, God just grew this love and this passion for these children in my heart. And he ignited this sense of excitement about what we could do. And God can equip us for a role, even if we don't feel as though we're ready. So we've got a choice to respond, just as Isaiah did. And you know what? It is so good that he did respond that way, because we've now got all of this. The Jewish people had the scrolls of Isaiah, that all of his messages from God were written down on, and that became foundational for them, for their faith, for holding on to the promises of God. And he says here, this is in Isaiah 9, 6-7, he says, we might recognise this because this is often read at Christmas. "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this." Isn't that amazing that 740 years before Jesus was born, that was said? And we're still now reading those verses as a reminder each Christmas time of what Isaiah prophesied, of what everyone was looking forward to and anticipating with the birth of Jesus. So let's fast forward 740 years, maybe 738 years. Zechariah was a priest, just as Isaiah had been a priest. He was actually from the tribe of Levi, which meant he could get kind of in the middle part of the temple, whereas Isaiah wouldn't have been allowed to. But he was back in Jerusalem. So we're in Jerusalem, they've gone, they've come back, and he's not in the same temple because with the message that Isaiah brought, with the judgment of God, the Babylonians had annihilated the previous temple, but it had been rebuilt. So Zechariah was in the new temple. It was actually about 500 years old by this point. And he was on rotation, like Isaiah was probably on rotation, and he would serve for a week, twice a year, plus festivals. And so he would then return home the rest of the time. He'd get on with his day job, be in his own kind of home village. But it was one of these weeks where he was on rotation. So he was in Jerusalem, and it was his job on this occasion to go into the inner room to burn incense. And what they would do is, and there'd probably be about 3 of them, they'd go in, 2 of them would kind of prepare it all, and then they'd go, and the third one would be left on their own, and it was their job to say prayers, intercessory prayers on behalf of Israel, and then burn this incense. And then the smoke from the incense would go up, and there'd be a big crowd of people who were all kind of there for prayer at that particular time of the day, and they'd be all kind of slightly outside, and they would see this smoke coming up. And then what they expected was that priest would then pretty quickly come out and lead them in some prayers. So this is what was happening, but it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I hadn't quite grasped this when I first read it, but there were so many priests, and a lot of them wouldn't have ever been chosen to do this. And it was done by kind of casting lots, kind of a bit of a film, I don't know, sounds like a bit of a gamble, doesn't it? And so he wouldn't have kind of known in advance that he was going to be doing this, or much in advance. And so this was exciting. This was like his moment. We know, we'll read in a minute, he was old, and he'd been going for a long time, and like, this was big, once in a lifetime opportunity. And he was, sorry, hi Annie. And so this was big. He was probably buzzing. He was probably also feeling a bit nervous, to be honest, because you don't want to get this wrong, do you? He probably hadn't had much practice. And so he was going in, and that's kind of a bit of a context to what our reading is. So the reading here is, I haven't got the reference here actually. Anyway, this is from Luke. It says, in the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. Once, when Zechariah's division was on duty and he was serving as priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And when the time for the burning of incense came, all the assembled worshippers were praying outside. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and gripped with fear. I don't know, have you ever been kind of really focused on something and you're a bit on edge, a bit nervous, and then someone just comes up next to you? I mean, you can understand that. A big angel appears. He's going to be startled, isn't he? And gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and a light to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He's never to take wine or other fermented drink, and he'll be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he's born. He'll bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the parents to their children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Zechariah asked the angel, how can I be sure of this? I'm an old man, and my wife is well along in years. The angel said to him, I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news. And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time. Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and wondering why he stayed so long in the temple. When he came out, he could not speak to them. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, but he kept making signs to them, but remained unable to speak. When his time of service was completed, he returned home. After this, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant, and for 5 months remained in seclusion. So I want us to imagine for a moment the excitement in heaven at this time. We don't always think about that, do we? But this is big. Jesus was coming to earth was coming as the rescuer. They may have known about this from the beginning of time, or at least they'd known about it definitely for 740 years. And this was absolutely huge. They knew how transformational this was going to be for the relationship between God and humans. There would have been some kind of anticipation. There would have been a buzz. There would have been an energy in heaven around this, I'm sure. And they probably can't wait. And Gabriel, he gets the job of announcing it. I mean, what a job. He's going to say, look, it's beginning, guys. And he not only was going to be telling Zechariah this, just after, like Zechariah literally was praying for exactly that in that moment, doing the incense. But he was also going to be answering Zechariah's prayer about having a baby, which he had been praying for decades. Like, this was big. This is exciting. And what does Zechariah say? He said, well, I don't know if you know this, Gabriel, but are you sure? Because me and my wife, we can't have babies, and I mean, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? What? Like, how is Gabriel going to be feeling in that moment? I can't speak for an angel, but I would want to shake him. Like, come on, this is big. You've been praying for this. Aren't you praying for things you actually believe will happen? Like, this is huge. I'm just telling you, all your prayers are being answered. And you say, oh, there's this practical issue, actually, I'm not sure God can overcome. I mean, I quite like the idea that Gabriel is frustrated with him, so says, well, I've had enough from you. Like, that's it, no more talking. No, I don't think that's what happened. Maybe God planned that right from the beginning, that Zechariah wouldn't be able to speak. Or maybe his unbelief created an opportunity that was too good to miss. Because, you know, I think there was something quite powerful about spreading the word of this through him not being able to speak. Because you imagine he comes out and he's late, they're thinking, what on earth's going on in there? He comes out, and instead of standing on the steps and saying, okay, guys, I'm going to lead you in a time of prayer now, he's like, oh, like he's what's going on with this guy? For the purpose of the audio recording, I've just mimed what Zechariah may have been miming. They would say, look, this priest came out. He was playing charades. I mean, what was going on? Something big must have happened. They would have gone home and they would have said to their friends, they would have talked on the way back saying, what is this all about? Something big must have happened in there. And word would have spread. He would have gone home to his village at the end of his duties, and his friends who knew him as a godly, upstanding person, who knew that him and Elizabeth hadn't been able to conceive, they would have found out he can't speak. But what happened? And he would have done the same miming thing probably, or maybe he knew how to write. That would have been helpful, wouldn't it? But he would have communicated somehow to them some of what had been said. And they might not have understood it all, but they would have thought, whoa, this is crazy. And then Elizabeth falls pregnant. And they think, okay, there's something in this. And it's lovely, isn't it? It says, the verses that we just read, it says, many will rejoice because of his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. There was this anticipation about the birth of Elizabeth's baby because they knew something big was going on. There's something with this baby. And so God used the unbelief. God used him not being able to speak. And you think, that doesn't make any sense. If we want to spread the word that this is starting, surely we need to be able to speak. But it was so much more powerful that he couldn't. God does everything for his glory. And we don't always understand it. But what a way to prepare the people for Jesus' coming. What a start to the Christmas story. And I found it quite enjoyable and inspiring studying these two scriptures. And I hope that it brings a bit of an excitement about this Christmas season for you too, that just as these two encounters were preparing the way for Jesus, that we will go away from today feeling a little bit prepared for this Christmas season. I'm going to finish with a prayer. Father God in heaven, we are ruined. We are people of unclean lips and sinful hearts, but you love us. You loved us so much that you came to earth and died on a cross so that we could be cleansed and made new. Please don't let us forget the enormity and transformational significance of this, and forgive us when we do. Lord, open our eyes and minds so that we can grow in our understanding of who you are. Help us to worship you with all of ourselves, removing distractions or our embarrassment or reservations so that we can fully worship you and experience your holy, holy, holiness. And I pray that we would regularly say to you, here I am, send me. We want to join in with what you're doing in our church, in our village, in our country, and our world. Please use us in any way you choose to bring glory to you. We bring to you anew the prayers that we've prayed over many years, ones that we've maybe given up on, ones that we maybe don't really believe we're going to get an answer to anymore. Prayers that we may have stopped praying because it feels hopeless or too big. Give us a renewed understanding of your power so that our prayers and expectations of what you can do aren't limited by the practical issues that we might see. And in the build up to Christmas, I pray that we'd be able to capture some of the excitement from heaven and some of that anticipation that was building in and around Jerusalem for a baby who would be born. Not John the Baptist, but Jesus, the one who would be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Amen.